I thought we'd start off with something that I don't think either of us has seen, but I've been looking at the pictures and it looks gorgeous. The mega movie parade that premiered this last week at Universal Studios Orlando.
Mm-hmm.
It was in tech rehearsals for a little bit, and it came out of tech rehearsals, and so now it's officially fully opened, and it comes 2 years after the previous daytime parade, which was Universal Superstar Parade, which closed in June 2022. So almost about exactly 2 years after that. And while that parade was oriented towards younger guests, this one more has a wider audience. So for the younger kids, it has Sing, Kung Fu Panda, Trolls, Minions. And then for older audiences that want nostalgia, they have Back to the Future, Jaws, Ghostbuster, E.T., and Jurassic World. They also have the new parade mode for the little wands that they sell, which synchronizes with the Minions, Trolls, and Jurassic World's floats. So like the flashing coordinates, like Glow with the Show, but parade, and it's in a little wand. So I have been looking at the pictures, and so here's some things. I know that some of the people who have worked on it and that are in the industry, they talk about some of the technical issues and how like sometimes the Marshmallow Man float has not made it out every day because there are some issues with. I mean, basically there are a lot of issues with the parade from a technical standpoint, and sometimes the floats don't always go out, and there's some back and forth. But again, I'm less concerned about that because I think that it looks great, and I think to the person who doesn't know, i.e. the average guest, then they don't know it's not supposed to, whatever. And I think that in bringing in the nostalgia with those Back to the Future and with E.T. and with those, I think that is a master stroke, just like with their celebration. And you know what? I think the floats look great, and they kind of is like good enough. I always think I hate to like have that perspective because I think so many people are upset it isn't working every day the way it's supposed to. But neither did Harry Potter. Like nothing ever works in that way, right? And then you kind of like they slowly figure out a different way to make it work and make it more sustainable. But any live entertainment that is bonus, especially one that has nostalgic, multi-generational factors with interactives, I think all of this is cause for celebration. So gold star in my book.
Agreed 100%. And like you said, we do have friends, actually different friends that have worked on this project. And a lot of 3 of the floats were designed by a very good friend of mine who I think is just brilliant.
Yep.
And
Kim Graham.
Yeah. And the thing about this parade that I think is interesting, let's talk about it first from a brand standpoint. As you point out, it is what is perceived as nostalgic. I also think it's leaning into the IPs that they have more control over.
Mm-hmm.
So it's building upon. It's not trying to. It's not trying to create a legacy from new IPs. It's leaning into the IPs that they have control over, that are legacy IPs that have been around for a while, that have already survived the test of time. I mean, let's face it. We just recently went, when this is being recorded, we just recently went past July 4th a couple weeks ago, and the moment July 4th rolls around, everybody talks about Jaws.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who talk about Jaws and expect to watch Jaws and expect to experience Jaws who weren't born when Jaws came out. The Shark Con is another example. Every time Shark Con comes out, the movie Jaws comes to the surface, and the stars come out from it, and anybody who is affiliated comes out to be part of Shark Con. So they're leaning into those IPs that are really part of our lives. I mean, they're not just cool movies. They're things that have formed really U.S. parts of U.S. culture, U.S. pop culture, certainly. And so I think there's that. And then as far as the glitches and the oopses that have happened, let's be honest. Anytime you are pushing the boundaries of what has been done before, you're going to have those. And if you don't ever push yourself past the point of 100% success, you're never going to grow.
Yep.
So they're clearly trying to make things happen in a way that has not been done before. One of the things that's all the talk now is be in the right place at the right time for the dinosaur to roar.
Yeah.
Because he's scheduled to roar at the opening and closing of the parade, and it's on the float, and this is a full-size T-Rex for those of you who have not seen the photos of it. So it's it's one of those things that we can't, this early on, we can't be too judgmental, in my opinion. You can't be too judgmental of things that aren't working 100% of the time, because again, they're brand new.
Yep.
And several months ago, they weren't even available for guests to see, and now they're out there and they're learning from their mistakes. They're learning how they can make things more consistent. And does that mean redesign? Perhaps. But again, not being on the inside, I don't know that answer. But it also means that they're learning to expand and grow on the technology that they can use. And so I think this is just all around a good thing. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to seeing it myself, actually, in person.
I think that, to me, it's becoming a little bit more clear. We've talked about this in the past a lot, and it echoes what you were just saying a little bit. Like, I think we've talked about the kind of the different not converging, but the business models between Disney and Universal kind of becoming a little bit different. And we also talked about the Six Flags one previously. And to me, it kind of seems like, I think a big problem that Six Flags had, and Cedar Fair, and maybe continue to have, or, it just keeps going. Because if we remember, we just talked about the Camp Snoopy thing. We had like the same things come with Camp Snoopy, right? Where like it opened late, and then it was like, and there's all this talk about it going on. But it seems to me like what happened was, they tried to push the annual pass sales for both of those chains, where you could, get so many multiple parks and all that, kind of push that really hard, which really, I think, made it ultimately tougher. Because again, like what Disney was trying to do, right, was maximize the amount of single ticket guests they could get in. And then you had the complete opposite of that, which was the Six Flags parks that were like just giving away tickets, to get people in the door, and in the idea that in-park spending would make up for it, when it turns out it doesn't really. And what that leads to is less of a budget for live entertainment, and less of a budget for those things that are the first things to get stripped, which are parades and live entertainment and that kind of thing. So you end up with like kind of just going into the, where you hear, and then versus Disney, which is like trying to maximize that. So I think these people have been pushing limits on each end. Like how low can you go, kind of like for the Six Flags thing, which didn't really work either. Because then you got that where they canceled a bunch of the stuff, live entertainment, and then for Disney, obviously hitting the ceiling of like, that it's when the last time they raised the prices, up to $1,600 for the pass that the not even every day anymore, right, pass, but then they're trying to maximize the day guests. And I feel like Universal's kind of trying to figure out their boundaries in the middle of this, of being like, okay, we still want to bring in live entertainment, so we want to do this float, but maybe it doesn't need to have as big of a budget as some of the ones in the past have. And maybe, for a little bit less testing, where is that line of like, we still want to do new things to bring in the appropriate amount of day guests so that we still have the revenue from them. But it's a difficult line to walk by. I sense they're trying to figure that out of, what is good enough to bring in the day guests or to entertain the pass holder people, but keep a balance of the two, because it all leads back to the funding. I mean, you need the full price day guests, to be able to pay for live entertainment, in my opinion. I think that's how it is.
Well, and it's as long as I've been involved in the industry, it has the pendulum has swung back and forth between, do we make our money on ticket sales or do we make our money on in-park spend? Yep. And the general rule of thumb used to be, and again, I don't know whether this is still true or not, but it used to be, you make your baseline on the ticket sales, and you make your profit on the in-park spend. So that's grossly oversimplified. I know it is not like that. I know there are much more intricate ways of tracking revenue streams, but that was kind of the general rule of thumb for many, many years. Because I'm not as involved with the operations of parks as I used to be, I don't know whether that's still true or not. I can't speak to that, but they kind of do this push-pull back and forth. It just depends on how you are measuring success. Are you measuring success by clicks of the turnstile, or are you measuring success in dollars? Are you measuring? There's so many different business strategies that people much smarter or much more educated than I have put into to play to figure out which is better. Is it better to just get people in the park
Yep.
and get them to spend money, or is it better to just bleed them dry for every ounce we can get out of them, and they'll still keep coming? And I think what's really interesting, you mentioning Disney and Universal. I think you're right. I think Universal is trying to find its place in this turbulent ocean of attractions. But I also think they have been watching what has not worked for Disney pretty closely,
Yep.
and they're keeping an eye on it. But I think we are only going to, in the next couple of years, we're going to see how much of a game changer Epic truly is going to be.
Yep.
Epic Universe here in Florida, and I think it's going to be huge. There has always been a internal friendly / not so friendly competition between Universal and Disney. Disney was the powerhouse in Orlando for many years, and Orlando, just even right after the first Harry Potter opened, Disney was still the reason people came.
Yeah.
And that is starting to shift.
Yeah.
That is starting to shift. And I think Epic is going to be that straw that breaks the camel's back. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly our next story. So it's a great lead up with all this is context for the next story, which is that Epic Universe they have already put out a statement. They put the statement out to third-party ticket resellers. So it wasn't meant for the public per se, but of course, I'm sure everyone knows it was going to go to the public because that's how these things work. But just to clarify on that, they said that when sales launch, in order to visit Epic Universe, guests must purchase a multi-day Universal Orlando ticket package with a 3-day minimum, all of which allot only 1 day at Epic Universe and will not include park hopping to or from the new park. At launch time, there will be no option to purchase a standalone single-day Epic Universe ticket. So this is also one of those things that's gained so much attention, I think, from the people inside the industry, like ourselves that are really upset about this and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, to me, it goes back to what it's the conversation we just had, which is them trying to maximize the revenue, for the new park. And also it's one of those things where it's, I want to how do you be nice about these things? But it's not for us. The new theme park is not for the locals. The new theme park is to bring people to Orlando that do not live there, and those people, they probably haven't been to the other. So for them, it's I think a much less of a you know what I mean? For them, it's okay, well, we can go to all 3 parks and see see all 3 of them.
I think there are 2 theories at play here. Number one, they have to control the number of people that want to go to the new park.
Yep. Exactly.
They have to find a way to do it without setting ticket limits. So, because that always has a real negative pushback, especially when in an early park. What do you mean the park is sold out and we can't go? We've seen all these, everywhere we go, we see these ads and these billboards and the this and the that, and we still can't. So it's number one, it's to control attendance.
Yep.
At the new park because everybody wants to go. And the second theory that comes into play here is theme parks are always concerned that when a new park opens, it pulls revenue from the other parks. And they don't want to pull revenue from islands or studios. So by doing this, they are in essence requiring guests to visit all 3 of the parks. Now, this is not going to last forever.
Exactly.
It is not going to last forever. This is an opening. This is how the way it sounds to me is this is how they are in essence doing their soft opening.
Yep.
This is how they are going to control crowds, figure out how many people they can actually get in,
Yep.
How many people they can actually get through the attractions without creating any sort of negativity with the guests, or a limited or a reasonable amount of negativity from the guests. So I think it's number one to control the population of the new park, and number two, not to rob Peter to pay Paul, so that people don't, if they decide, well, gosh, I go to Islands of Adventure, I'm local, I go to Islands of Adventure every 2 weeks, but now I'm not going to go anymore. I'm going to go to Epic every 2 weeks. Well, then the other park has some challenges,
Right.
and they want to make sure that they are not only keeping all three of their park properties. I know there's Volcano.
Yeah. We know they call
But
them parks. We don't call it a park. Yeah.
I call it a water park, but they don't. They call it an aquatic theme park, actually. But it is. I mean, that's fair, but it's of the three major properties. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
They're wanting to make certain that guests don't forget that there are two other parks and that they are equally as wonderful and equally as exciting. And so I think it's a very smart move, actually.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't think it's going to last.
Well, no, it's exactly what you're saying, right? About them planning the crowds. So basically they're like, look, we think we can fit X amount, so we're going to sell these 3-day ticket packages and see how well it sells into that. And then as it gets closer, they can open up a few sales, a single day sales, or just do whatever, or not. If demand skyrockets, then this way, like you said, they get to push demand to all the parks equally, and it doesn't hurt. I mean,
And when people come to visit for a week, when people come to Orlando to visit for a week,
then they go 3 days.
They know that they're not spending 5 days in Epic. They're spending one of 3.
Yep.
And then, the other 2 days they're probably going to do Disney, quite honestly.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think this is a great strategy, and I actually don't see anything wrong with it, because I think we have to remember that it isn't for us. That sounds terrible, but the new park isn't for the locals, despite what they say. Even Universal says it's really not. It's to bring in people that wouldn't normally have gone, because just like you said, if they were going to go anyway, that doesn't really help them at all. They want, basically what Universal wants they want overall someone to add an extra day to go to Epic. That's what they want overall, is for them to do their Universal plus a day.
Right. And that's what
everyone wants.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody who has multiple parks on the same property, that's what they want. They want you to go to multiple parks. It also encourages overnight stay. It also encourages, and I'm going to guess, I don't know this, but I'm going to guess, just based on what Universal has done in the past, that with a hotel stay, there will be some additional perks, as far as getting in early, staying late, whatever. So it's going to not only keep people spread out throughout the property, so it's not, the studios and islands are empty and Epic is packed to the point of being uncomfortable. They don't want that for the opening. So they're going to keep people spread out throughout all of their properties. And I think it's really smart. And I think it's also, like I said, going to help hotel stays. I think there's nothing wrong with this. To me, it is a much wiser way of doing things than just limiting the number of people who can go to Epic each day.
Yep, 100%. Yeah. In many ways, I actually think that it would have been, if Disney had done something like this, it would have actually been better as well. I mean, and I just think back to when I was going to Fantasy Springs trying to get in, as a tourist, again, going to that thing, I would have gladly gotten a 3-day thing and then done, or a 2-day or whatever. I would have gotten a combo ticket gladly and then spent the time there, even if I didn't stay locally, but I would have taken the train over. I mean, I think that's exactly what we're trying to do. But in related news, to kind of add one thing in there, another piece to this thing, not necessarily Epic, but so the Halloween Horror Nights tickets for this year at Orlando, there was news that broke this week as well, that essentially they did release the multi-night tickets, which again, come on, it's same strategy people they're following here. At first it was just a single day and the tours for Halloween Horror Nights, and then they did release this week. They released the multi-night tickets, which is how it works. I think the same thing's going to happen with Epic. Basically, it's just kind of where they release them in tiers, but pretty quickly after they released the multi-night tickets, news broke and that the express version of those multi-night tickets is sold out on all of the multi-night tickets. And now they've even added to the ticket page, big red lettering on them that says that the express stuff is sold out. So essentially they're offering 4 multi-night options for Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando, and only the first one, which is like, the first few weekend pass, but the ones that run the entire season are also that of Express. And that one, I am wondering, because I know that the tours are also selling out. So is this a case of them trying to tamp or correct Express demand, because the line's getting so crazy previously? Or is this truly a case of it sold out because demand is so high? And that's why I want your take on, Scott. But one more thing to add for the audience listening: they did increase the ticket prices for those about 20% for the Express things. I mean, so it was $1,000, for multi-night Express. So we're talking about $1,000 tickets here for a Halloween event that are sold out. So, what are your thoughts, Scott?
Well, I'm curious. I can see this appealing to two very distinct but very different audiences. Number one, obviously people are going to say, "Oh, well, this is obviously for locals. This is what the locals want." And I'm gonna say, yeah, there's probably quite a few. However, I think even more than that is the people who have to plan vacations or tours or trips to come down and experience Halloween Horror Nights. And, instead of coming down and spending, coming down from the north, say the Chicagoland area, coming down to Orlando, and instead of spending a 5-day vacation and only being able to go one night, now they can go every single night. I think that's really I think that's really where these have sold out, is that once those, and Philip, these people, we both know these people personally, that they spend their entire life, the whole Halloween season, traveling from one haunt to the next, and there are some who are such Horror Nights fans that they just, they'll drop down $1,000 to be there for, the 4 nights that they're in Orlando.
Yeah. So you think it's authentic, like it's authentically sold out, basically, where even though they bumped the prices up on the multi-night Express, that maybe they reduced the inventory of the multi-night Express and they bumped the tickets. And do you think that's going on, that they authentically sold the multi-night Express?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Okay.
And that's just knowing who the target audience is, or target audiences are. Because yes, the locals are going to dive in on that, immediately.
Interesting.
Immediately. Mm. But now, I'm not saying that they won't release some other mutation of a multi-night ticket. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? But again, what I would caution, and what I hope they're planning to do, is not oversell the event to the point where it is just completely unpleasant.
Yeah.
That's honestly part of the reason that I don't go very often anymore, because to me, it's not fun.
Yeah.
I find nothing enjoyable about going to Halloween Horror Nights. And it's not because it's not a quality event. I just don't like the creature comforts. I don't like the fact that I am shoulder to shoulder the whole night. I don't like the fact that I have to wait 45 minutes to buy a drink. I don't like the fact that even with Express Pass or even with a tour, there is a queue, there is a wait. Now, granted, when I was going regularly, or at least every year, at least once a year, I was going as a guest of somebody who was working there, so I was spoiled rotten. But I think, if that is, I'm going to say it. I'm too old for it. I no longer find the joy. I don't find enough joy in the well-crafted haunts, the event itself, to deal with the crowds and the difficulties, the lack of creature comforts.
Yeah.
But that's my own opinion. So that has nothing to do with the quality of the event. So please don't think I'm dissing Halloween Horror Nights. I don't want to get letters saying, "Oh, Scott hates Halloween Horror Nights." No, I don't. It's just not the event I want to go to anymore.
Yeah. 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 And it could be what we were talking about. I don't know when we talked about this, but the concept of, it isn't for us. I think sometimes theme park people, we get into our little things or whatever, but it's not for us. It's for the general public, and that's what matters. It matters, if they want to stand in the lines or not. I mean, again, I think Universal, it's all about testing the limits. What is the limits for Horror Nights? What and that seems to me like them testing partially. So maybe they did release the inventory and that's why it sold out, or they restricted the inventory on that and that's why it sold out so quickly. And because they found out, well, you know what, like the regular audiences will just stand in line. I don't know. Because I was talking to somebody just recently about this. It was funny. And they were asking about how they should experience Horror Nights or whatever. And I think I said something similar. I was like, well, if you go for just one night, you have to get express because there's no way that you're going to experience it otherwise. And they were like, well, that's crazy. Like, how do you do it? And I was like, well, I buy the multi-night and then I go for like 5 nights throughout the haunt season. And I show up at like 11 p.m. or midnight and I'm there for 2 hours and I get like 2 or 3 haunts done. And, if you're in line at 1:45 in the morning, the wait's probably 5 or 10 minutes, and they're just looking at me like, "Are you insane? Like you are literally like you're spending 4 nights where you're showing up at midnight just to avoid the lines." And I was like, yes, if you put it that way,
I'm insane. Yes, I am insane. Yes, yeah, but I mean but you're a perfect example of why this ticket media sold out so quickly, because you think you're the only one doing this, Philip. You're not.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know. I think it's very interesting to see that, when they've learned, okay, yes, this is where we're going to max out here. It is quite possible that they have we'll call it a second wave of a different type of multi-night ticket that they have in the
pipeline.
That in the pipeline that will come up will be a flash sale or something mid run just to keep people talking about the event. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with trying to make bank while you can. The event has a limited. Currently has a limited time frame, so they have to make back that investment and make as much profit. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
The only thing that I would question is just make certain that for your audience now, which does not really include me, although I do go. It's not that I sound like I never go. I do go. But if for those people who are willing to stand in lines of any kind for 4 or 5 nights in a row, how long is that line and what are they willing to pay for it? And what is the breaking point to when they say, nope, too much? When do they turn to Old Man Scott? It is a unique situation to be in. How do you manage success? Because I think it's actually easier to manage failure because well, this isn't working. Let's try this. But when you're having success and you go, well, how much more can we get without coming across as greedy and without undermining the product.
Yeah.
So that's really the science that they're playing with here. And I've always been a proponent of, I would rather see things sell out, especially things like an express pass. I would rather see things sell out than to keep selling them up to the point where they have no value anymore.
Yeah.
So it undermines the experience. Okay,
we have 1 minute to get to our last story here, basically. But I feel like everything you just said applies to this. So hopefully we'll give you basically Disney is changing lightning lanes. And I think this goes hand in hand with what you were saying, because again, it seems like they're trying to balance the demand and figure out how much they can push or not push on it. Essentially, this change is going to roll out in about 10 days. And they're going to rebrand it for Disney Genie Plus. Will be known as Lightning Lane Multipass. And so one is a rebrand. So in California, it's going to be only the name is changing. However, in Orlando, what's going to happen is essentially they're adding like extended reservations for it. So visitors who purchase Lightning Lane will be able to book 3 Lightning Lane Multipasses experiences in advance of their theme park visit starting in July. Guests staying at the Walt Disney World Resort hotels will be able to book return times and dates for their visit up to 14 days, starting 7 days in advance of their arrival. So other theme park visitors will be able to book return time starting 3 days in advance of their visit. So really they're making, again, the planning so much more intense because you you can book not just dates but also times for it if you're staying at the hotel, and in a week at least in advance if you're staying in hotels. So it is maybe they're, again, I think maybe trying to manage that a little bit and seeing what they can push on it, but it's also adds a lot more work, I think, to the theme park planning or to the vacation planning process. Now, because now you got to choose what you're going to do every hour of the day.
I've shared my view on this since it started, and I applaud the people who have the patience and the desire to work that hard to relax. But that is once again, my opinion. Clearly it works. I've talked to many families who have children, and they say it is a godsend because they don't have to wait in the god-awful queues that they waited, the 2-hour queues that I waited in when I was 7 years old visiting Walt Disney World for the first time. So there are pluses and minuses. And again, as long as they can find what that balance is, more power to them. Hopefully they can expand it to the point where it is profitable and yet does not impinge upon the guest experience. So it tips the balance to all of a sudden everybody wants it, so they're going to pay a premium. And now that they've paid the premium, it's impacted the experience so negatively that nobody wants it. That's the tipping point that they have to just be aware of. And it's a hard tipping point to find. So they have to continue to play with that. So I'm hoping that this is helping them generate revenue. I'm hoping it is helping them move people around the parks in an appropriate manner. But just don't get greedy, because the moment you get too greedy and you go too far, it basically slaughters the hog, and you don't want to do that. So,
Star Cruiser.
I didn't say it. So anyway, as Philip said, we are out of time. We've actually gone over. On behalf of Philip Hernandez and myself, Scott Swenson, this is Green Tag Theme Park in 30, and we look forward to seeing you next week.